Welcome, everyone. This is our official interview with Terry R. Wickham. I'm Demetrius Spilevsky interviewing him. He is an award-winning producer, director, editor, and screenwriter, and I'm so happy to have him. Terry, the stage is yours if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Um, it's always nice to talk about filmmaking and my films in particular. Not so much for me personally, but for the films so they get exposure and people can find out about them.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we'll start with the first question. How did you get started with your film career? Like when did you know that you wanted to start doing it? I remember for me it was a few years back after watching a movie that inspired me. So what was your first initial wanting to make films?
I think the initial one that really hit me was in 1978. I was 13 years old and I saw John Carpenter's Halloween and really scared me. It,
Yeah.
it scared me. And the imagery from the movie I just could not get out of my head.
Hmm.
And I remember being on a baseball field the next day, not a game, just with friends.
Yeah.
And I was on the pitching mound, just like throwing balls to my friends.
Uh-huh.
And I kept thinking about Michael Myers on the sidewalk, Michael Myers outside the school with Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yeah.
out in the clothesline outside the house,
Hmm.
in the closet, sitting up at the end, So
Yeah.
those things just stayed with me. And I didn't know it was directing right away, but I knew I wanted to learn more about films and how they're made. So I started paying a little more attention. At that time, it was a little different world then. There was no digital effects.
Hmm.
What was really kind of hot at the time
Yeah.
was special makeup effects. So you're talking about American Werewolf in London,
Yeah.
slasher films, you know, Altered States. The Exorcist obviously was like a couple years before that, but I thought it was makeup effects. And then 4 years after Halloween, I saw John Carpenter's The Thing.
Hmm.
And when I was watching it, it didn't hit me. I was blown away by the movie, but when I walked out of the theater,
Yeah.
looked up at the poster and I said, wait a second, that's the same guy who made Halloween. And it was at that very time I said, I got to do what he did to me twice. So that's what got, and at that point I said I had to become a director. I
Yeah.
didn't know what directing was, but at that point I was dedicated and I've lived my life ever since for that.
That's very cool. That's very cool. For me, my personal movie that inspired me was the Scream franchise. When I saw the fifth movie in theaters, ever since then, I've always wanted to make movies. So here I am now too. So that's
Awesome.
interesting. Yeah.
Awesome.
Um, so is Halloween is like the film that really inspired you to do filmmaking, right?
Yeah. And there was two other ones well, one other one I would definitely mention. Besides Halloween and the Thing,
Yeah.
was in 1984. I was in the Army.
Okay.
I was in my training school, which
Hmm.
was after basic training, and I was at Fort Ben Harrison, Indiana.
Hmm.
It, I went and saw a movie on a Saturday night. This is the only time in my life I've ever done this. I saw it on Saturday night, paid to see it, was
Hmm.
so blown away. Paid to see it the next night on Sunday night. Went to pay to see it the next night on Monday night. Paid to see it the next night, 4 nights in a row. That's never happened before or since. And
Yeah.
that was James Cameron's The Terminator. And it
Wow.
just blew my mind. So those are the three films that really
Mhm.
inspired me. Halloween, The Thing, and The Terminator.
Yeah, I know James Cameron is a legendary filmmaker. Like he's very good at it, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. So getting into the next question, when you're making films, what would be your most favorite part making it? You know what I mean? Like what?
I think my favorite part is being on a set working with actors and crew. I mean, because when you write a script,
Hmm.
it's really to be in that mode of making the movie. And then when you're editing, you're putting everything together. But to me, the most valuable time is that interaction with your cast,
Yeah.
with your crew. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult to get a movie made. It's very difficult when you're actually making a film physically, mentally, spiritually. But that's the part I enjoy the most by far.
That's nice. That's really cool. What was maybe the most challenging part when you were making films?
I think the most challenging part is just getting the resources or the money to make a film. I
Hmm.
think it's always a struggle. There's no answer right away. I'm not independently wealthy. I
Yeah.
didn't come from a family with money. So
Hmm.
all my films I've had to scratch and claw to get made. And the one I made 2 months ago that your father worked on as still photographer, we crowdfunded that movie. It was the first time in my career that I reached a goal on the crowdfund. We actually exceeded the goal. And by the way, anyone out there that's interested in still being part of it, they can, because in Indiegogo, which is the
Yep.
platform we used, because we met our goal, they put our film into a status called in demand, which means people can still pick perks
Yeah.
and contribute, get Blu-rays, get a chance to go to meet the cast and crew at the premiere. They can all still do that because they realize movies need money sometimes after the fact for editing, post-production, color correction, making DVDs, Blu-rays, all that DCP. So if anyone's out there still interested, go indiegogo.com, beginning to the end, because you can still be part of this one. And I am directing a movie in 3 weeks, another film.
Very cool. That's very cool. So far out of the films that you've made, because I know you've made quite a few, what would you say is your most successful or your favorite one that you've made?
Well, you've heard other directors probably say this as well. They're kind of like your kids. They're born
Yeah.
out of your creativity. And, they all have certain special, I'm not saying they're all perfect. I'm sure other directors would say the same because,
Mhm.
you're dealing with the lack of money or lack of time,
Yep.
lack of resources, whatever it may be. So I would say, I really feel that the best one experience-wise was the last one I just shot.
Mhm.
But as far as one which was beginning to the end, which we're still in post on right now,
Yep.
but it looks freaking amazing. It's shot in anamorphic widescreen, like
Mhm.
John Carpenter. The actors are off the hook. Caitlin Jane, Ron Keel, Melanie Portnoy,
Mhm.
Matthew, Dalton Lynch. I mean, my cast was amazing. I think the one that's finished, that's out there right now, that's my favorite probably, is my last feature film before this. It's called Terry R. Wickham's Double Vision.
Yeah.
I put my name above the title if I write, direct, and produce it, because
Yeah.
that means I'm the creative force. And I do that as a nod to John Carpenter, because if you ever watch Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, John Carpenter's Escape from New York, The
Yeah.
Thing, etc. So anyone out there can go on Tubi right now and they can watch it for free. And we actually get a little bit more money. I don't mean a lot of money, but we get a little bit more from Tubi because there's commercials and commercials pay filmmakers. So if you rent it on Amazon, we wouldn't even get as much as we give Tubi. It's not that we get a lot, but we get a little bit more than the 2 cents that Amazon gives you for a 2-hour movie.
Mhm. That's very cool. So yeah, guys, go watch those movies if you haven't already. But next up, I saw the video you posted on your YouTube about using the blackout curtains for the scenes when, it was outdoors and it was daytime and you had nighttime scenes. So like, could you give a little bit more like in depth of like how things like that could be challenging and how you work around some challenges in your films, such as that?
Yeah, yeah, if you've made a lot of films like I have, you realize that if you have people work at night, like dead at night, which
Mhm.
I've done many times, overnight shoots, everybody moves slower. It's not as efficient.
Mhm.
So as a filmmaker, you want to work in the day if you're inside and block the light to make it look like night because people work better because people are used to working during the day.
Mhm.
So in that movie, which was broad daylight, summertime in August in New Jersey, we had to block it. So we had Duvetine
Yeah.
and lots of big, thick garbage bags.
Mhm.
And the challenge was to block all the windows. It
Mhm.
took us 4.5 hours the first day before we could even get the first shot. And after that, the homeowner agreed to let most of them stay up for the time that we were there. But we did have to block a couple the second day and then the second weekend after that. So that was a challenge. And I'm one of these guys that I'm not a baby. I get out there myself and I'm taking, painter's tape and putting up stuff myself because it behooves me because the quicker we get it done, the quicker we shoot.
Yeah, that's very true. Next up, do you usually take risks when you're making films, like sometimes push things over something or, make risks that will sometimes end up better in the long run
I
down
would
the
say I would say I try to do that all the time.
hmm
I'll give you one example. So I did a movie that was part of Devil's Five called Abandoned.
Yeah.
Had 3 movies I directed within that feature film, and you could go on Tubi and I think you can rent it for free.
Mhm.
Um, it was released by a company called Random Media out in Hollywood, so it got released all over the world. Anyway, there's a movie called Abandoned, and I had written a part for an actress, and I wanted there to be a little bit of topless nudity
Mhm.
because she's playing a model.
Yeah.
And there was a director that was supposed to make a movie that dropped out of the film. So he had kind of some sexual elements.
Hmm.
So I felt like I had to bring that to the table with the movie to replace his movie after he left.
Yeah.
And so when I was casting, I put an ad in Backstage and
Hmm.
it said there were going to be nudity. There's no sex, but it was just topless nudity.
Hmm.
And I knew that would restrict to how many actresses would respond.
Yeah.
When it came down to it, it came down to a Caucasian blonde, a redhead Caucasian, a Latin actress, and a black actress from Africa.
Oh, wow.
And to ask your question as far as risk, I said to myself, well, who would most people cast? And I felt it'd be the Caucasian blonde.
Hmm.
So I said, let me go the opposite way. Let me take a risk. I cast the black actress.
Yeah.
And the reason I did it was not because of the size of her chest. It was because of her teeth were beautiful. She had a great smile. She was very humble.
Hmm.
And she was actually, to me, the most beautiful out of the four actresses. So regardless of chest, it was actually about face. And turned out she was an amazing actress.
Yeah.
She got, I gave her a great part in the movie after that in Double Vision.
Hmm.
She plays a psychic. And she was actually the person to help find my editor for that movie after
Wow.
we lost our editor.
Hmm.
So she had a person that lived above her in her apartment
Hmm.
complex, and he works on big movies. He
Hmm.
ended up editing Double Vision for me. So
Wow.
she ended up being invaluable to me.
Yeah.
I loved her. Her name is Siaki Tete.
That's very cool. I think, yeah, one of a very important part with cast members and all that, you always want to have variety and, different nationalities in the films and everything. I think that's what always makes it so interesting. Like you have different accents in these movies and whatnot. So it's always interesting to all see that come into one.
Yeah, and I've been doing that way before it became like our society now, where everything's got to be, inclusive and have the. I was doing that since I've been making movies for almost 40 years.
Yeah, that's very cool. So getting into the one of the last questions, what are you most proud of in your career so far in filmmaking?
I guess I'm most proud of that I keep making movies, even though I don't have a lot of money.
Hmm.
Somehow, some way find a way of doing it. I think, as a young filmmaker, when I look back on it, you really don't know what you're doing. You can't because you don't know. You haven't done it. So
Hmm.
when I think of myself back in 1996 is when excuse me, 86.
Hmm.
I started in Germany when I was in the army. That's when I would consider the first time I directed. It was a music video for a band that I took a song from. I told a story to it, so the band was not in it.
Hmm.
They had no idea I even made the video. It's what I call an amateur music video, where you tell a story to a song and you can't sell it because you don't have permission to use it, but you make a little movie. And I used a band which a lot of people now know the name of, but
Hmm.
back then they did not. It's a heavy metal band called Pantera, and this was before they became popular in the 90s. And it was a song called Come On Eyes. And when I look back on it, I had some ideas of vision,
Yeah.
but I really didn't know what I was doing. But the thing is I had passion
Hmm.
and I worked at it. And over the years, I guess I'm most proud that I haven't quit. I
Hmm.
haven't stopped, and it's what I enjoy the most, I think, in the world. And I really feel that I'm good at it. So, um, I mean, I haven't been overnight success, obviously, but that's the thing I probably um, value the most in my career
Yeah,
and
thank
proud
you
of.
for sharing that. Now, one of the last questions, how do you like organize your not just your cast but your crew? Like how do you get all those people together and like make that function for being able to film and everything?
So, there's no right or wrong answer on how to do that. It's truthfully, every filmmaker would probably do it differently. When you're looking for a cast and crew, the obvious question is going to be, do you have any money to pay them? And
Hmm.
if you don't have money, how do you get them interested to commit to work on it? And you want to surround yourself with good people. So I think that there's so many ways you can go about doing that. But what I do is I just search out in places where you could find people like that, whether it be on the internet, film schools, friends that are within the industry, networking. And there's places like productionhub.com. You could contact the film commissions of wherever you're filming. New Jersey Film Commission has a great directory on how to look for still photographers, DPs, editors, drone flyers, everything.
Mhm.
New York City has one, Suffolk County, Nassau County on Long Island. So that's, if you're looking for actors, you go to Backstage, you go
Yep.
to Actors Access, you can contact acting schools, New York Film Academy, SVA, NYU, Columbia. There's so many ways to do it, but there's no wrong way. But the key is, I've always felt the key is don't lie to anybody.
Mhm.
Don't make up the movie more than it actually is. If you've got no money,
Yep.
be upfront about that
Mhm.
and explain what you want to do. And sometimes people will say no, they don't want to do it. And then sometimes you'll find people that do.
Mhm.
I just feel you have to be honest. And if you know what you're talking about and you're passionate, you will probably find some people that want to work with you.
Hmm. That's very cool. Thank you for that. So yeah, before we wrap up, I myself, I'm an aspiring film director and whatnot, and I know many people watching are as well. So is there anything you would like to say to those people who are being inspired by you and all the other directors and whatnot, who want to pursue that career?
I would say to you that I think it's really important not just to go to film school, which is not negative. It's good to do that. But don't rely on that as your only source of learning.
Yep.
The best way you can learn is by doing.
Yeah.
So whether you're making an amateur videos, you take a song from some band on the radio and you tell a story to it. Means you have to put actors in front of a camera, you've got to compose shots, you've got to figure out how to light it, how to shoot it, then you have to cut it. When I started out, there was no such thing as digital video.
Hmm.
At first, it was only film, which is really expensive.
Yeah.
And then we got VHS. Betacam,
Hmm.
VHS came in the early 80s. So then that became really, I mostly shot VHS. That's where I really learned. And then it went to, VHS-C, high eight, Betacam, half-inch video, three-quarter-inch video. Then you eventually got mini DV. Then you had, HD.
Yep.
Then you had high def, and
Hmm.
4K, 6K, 8K. So it's really evolved. But the thing I would say to you is, it's not about the type of camera you have, how much resolution it has. What it's really about is that you get together with some people, you get a crew with actors, and you tell a story, whether it's dialogue, a music video, a commercial, a portfolio for a model. You got to do it. You can't just talk about it. You
Hmm.
can't let that stop you. Somehow, some way, you got to make it happen.
Hmm.
And you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. And I think the key is when you look at your own work, don't fall in love with it. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't appreciate it, but you have to look at it realistically
Yeah.
and figure out what you're doing good and don't let that go to your head. And what you're doing wrong or bad, try to improve that. Watch a lot of movies, try to be very diverse, but be very self-critical. And that doesn't mean to let it paralyze you. Keep working at it because if you don't do it, you'll never get better at it. Film school and all that stuff, it's good, but by doing it, that's the best way to learn.
Hmm. For me, yeah, whenever I make films and then I make another one, I look back on the other ones and was like, okay, what did I mess up on here that I need to fix for the new one to make it better? I
Yeah.
look back on the mistakes from the last to improve them on the new one. So,
Yeah, I'm even still doing it now. And the thing I'll say to you that I think the biggest key is if you're a filmmaker out there, don't follow someone else's exact path.
hmm.
If you have a certain way you want to tell a story with the camera, whatever it may be, your actors, do it your own way because if you follow someone else's idea of how to shoot a movie, that means you're just going to be a copycat.
Hmm.
You don't want to do that. You can learn from those people, but start to veer off from that and combine it into your own world. Um, at this point, when I do movies, I'm not even really thinking about one movie that's inspiring me. I'm kind of thinking about what I want to say. Now, do I think about films in the process? Of course, but I'm not really thinking about any particular film. I'm thinking usually about like three or four of them that I kind of want to feel, and that's what I'm going for. On
Hmm.
the next movie, there's actually no film that is a reference for me. I know what I want to do. I
Yep.
want to create a movie that combines reality
Hmm.
a dream, and virtual reality back and forth. And that's going to be the next movie I make in 3 weeks.
That's very cool. I've never heard of that. That
Yeah,
seems
and I'm going to go in and out of it many times.
Mhm.
And it's going to make it kind of surreal for the audience,
Yep.
but in the end, it's absolutely real what's happening.
Mhm.
So, and it's different than the other movie I made, 2 or 3 months ago, which was really a home invasion that becomes a siege movie. And it was pretty violent and action-packed. I didn't want to, copy myself. So even though they're both part of the same anthology, they're part of a film called Begin the End,
Mhm.
which is about AI making people kill each other. And so I directed the first episode, and I'm going to direct the last episode. And there's two other guys doing the two other ones in between.
Okay, that's cool.
So I like that these other two guys are different than me, like they're totally different.
Yeah.
But I felt as the director that started the movie,
Hmm.
I had to grab the audience by the balls. And
Hmm.
in the end, they got to pay it off because the way you start is whether they watch the film.
Yep.
And I don't think anyone's going to be possibly bored with this film. And the last film, if I don't pay it off, then
Hmm.
people might say the movie sucked, even if it was good. So I feel that responsibility. I welcome that. I like that. I like to want to, you know, be the guy that, hopefully delivers that to the audience.
Yeah, it's always good to have a strong beginning and a strong end because there are some movies out there that have a strong beginning but not so much a strong end.
Yeah,
And it always, you know, that always affects how the movie really ends up in reputation. So it's always good to have a good beginning and an end, you know?
absolutely. So the folks out there that the movies they could go see is on Tubi is movie Double Vision. And it's released on a bunch of platforms as well. And then my movie Devil's Five, which has three movies I directed. It's another anthology. And I directed The Wraparound, which ends in between the other movies. I directed the first movie within the movie called Abandon, and I directed the last movie called Stash. That's on, I believe, YouTube and a bunch of other platforms. And my movie Gruesome Threesome was out in the world, but I actually pulled it off because it really wasn't doing well financially.
Mhm.
I might put that out somewhere else down the line, but right now that's not available to the public. But if you go to my YouTube channel, which I have about 3,000 subscribers, you can watch trailers. I have a YouTube channel show where I talk to rock stars and film directors. The Terrifier director, Damien Lone, was on about 2 years ago. The guy
Really?
who did Terrifier 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, he was one of my guests. We had a great conversation.
I
Uh,
recently watched that movie in theater.
oh, okay. Yeah. So
Terrifier.
he was on my show. So you guys should go on Terry. It's called Into the Depths with Terry R. Wickham.
Okay.
I've had 4 seasons, but this year, because I worked on my films, which is always my priority, I only put out one episode this year.
Okay.
And that was because my films are more important.
Hmm.
And but the years before that, I had like 10 to 12 shows per year.
That's
And
good.
all my trailers for my movie, they're all there, and a bunch of music videos as well. So you could go check out all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's just TerryWickham, Terry Wickham. Maybe you could put a link on your show for them.
I should. I will put the link in the description when everyone's watching. So yeah, make sure you guys go watch that. But everyone, please thank Terry for his time. Thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot to everyone, me and everyone watching. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And I guess if you want to put my Instagram,
Yes,
it,
Instagram
and,
too.
and my business website is on Facebook. It's Manta Ray Pictures LLC. If you guys go there and like it or follow it, you'll see every posting I do. I do what I call photo of the week. Every week I took a picture it could be from 86, from last year, from this year, and I tell a little story about that picture. So you're constantly getting updates and you'll keep up to date with all the films I'm doing. And by the way, next year, I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a drop dead, all out slasher. And when it's not going to be a copy of anybody else's.
Yep.
Remember, Halloween inspired me. So if
Yeah.
you like atmospheric, highly cinematic slasher films like My Bloody Valentine, The Prowler, Terror Train, even Scream, it's going to be kind of in that vein without being a copycat.
That's
So
cool.
and it's going to be a feature, just me writing it, directing, producing,
Yeah.
and Ron Keel from beginning to the end, and
Awesome.
Caitlin Jane are going to star in it.
Wow, that's very cool. I'm
Yeah,
excited for that. It's very cool.
awesome,
But yeah,
awesome.
everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks, Terry, for so much for being here. It means a lot to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, have a good night.